Good morning, family, or good afternoon, depending on when you're watching this. Perhaps good evening is in order. I had a wonderful email today, and I wanted to answer it in its own video because it was a great question, and I think this is going to help us have a really good conversation about this. And the question was, they said, I've heard that there are 613 laws in the Bible. How do we know which ones that we are supposed to follow? Now, that's a great question. First of all, I want to tell you that a lot of times we refer to 613 laws. That is an estimate. We don't know that's a definitive number. It depends on how you interpret commandments and stuff, because there's instructions. People consider each set of instructions from the Father to be one of those 613. So, first of all, we're still going to use that number 613. Okay, I just wanted you to know that's not like firm. But there are 613. And how do you know which ones apply to us? Well, we just finished the book explaining all of those. But a lot of people didn't realize that. And let me tell you why. There's a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is a lot of people have the attitude that, like, I'm speaking specifically about Leviticus. A lot of people have the attitude that, well, this doesn't apply to me. None of this applies to me. And so they're just kind of glazing over it half-heartedly at best, somewhat tuning in because they don't think it applies to them. And you'll hear things like, well, I'm a New Covenant Christian. Well, I'm a New Covenant Christian, and we've been studying the New Covenant since Genesis 1. But people don't recognize that. Some people, because the foundational text, especially in Leviticus, it doesn't taste like milk, and it's going to require some chewing to digest. And people don't want to do that. Now, there's another group of people who don't understand that it applies to us yet because the Father is revealing himself bit by bit. He's given you pieces to the puzzle, and you're collecting these pieces, maybe not fully understanding, which is fine, especially if you're reading through the Bible the first time, but you're collecting these pieces, and as you go through the Word, and we come to the end of the foundational scriptures, and we go into the prophets, and we go into the writings, and then we move into the Gospels, and we move into the letters, and then we move into Revelation. You're going to have all these fabulous pieces, and when we finish, you're like, you can sit back and see how it all fits together, and it's so exciting. Now, some of it, you're collecting these pieces, and the next go around, you'll be able to see so much more because you've already been through once. So don't feel bad if you didn't notice that in Leviticus, especially if this is your first time through. If you intentionally tuned out Leviticus or only half-heartedly paid attention, you're going to be smacking yourself when we get to the Gospels. But it's okay because you can catch it on the next go-round. Because the goal was never to read the Bible one time. The goal is to become daily Bible readers. So I want to get back to those 613 laws. A lot of those, if you'll notice in Leviticus next time we go through, a lot of those apply solely to Levitical priests. I'm not a Levitical priest. Chances are you're not a Levitical priest. Even more of those apply, well, not even more, I'm sorry. Some of them also apply only to farmers in the land. Some apply only to men. Some apply only to women. And then there's also special situations in which they apply, certain years. There's all kinds of things. So you can think, well, my goodness, how can I possibly be a law-abiding citizen in the kingdom? Well, it just so turns out that the Father knew this was going to feel like a bit much to us, and so he made a simple summary. So often we want the Cliff Notes version of the Bible. We don't want to actually sit and read the whole thing. And that is a terrible tragedy. And I've lost way too much time in my life having that kind of a mindset. So we do need to dedicate ourselves to the wholeness of the Father's Word. But like the wonderful parent and the greatest teacher... Hey, sweetie. Sorry, my neighbor's dog came in. Hey, baby. like the wonderful parent that he is, he gives us devices to make it easier for us. He gives us teaching tools. And so it all becomes very simple when we drum it down to the 10 Commandments. Seriously. And I want to walk through all those, and I want to show you how this works today. So, first of all, I memorized the 10 Commandments by a song. Some of you probably did that too. It was a little children's song, very simplistic. And I memorized each commandment, basically, the basic idea of each commandment through that song. It doesn't go into detail. And just as, we memorize the alphabet, and the alphabet is really simple. I mean, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? But through that alphabet, we then have access to poetry, to great speeches, to novels, to the very words of the creator of the universe from something as simple as the alphabet. Likewise, the 10 Commandments, they're very simplistic. They're very easy, but they give us access to the understanding of how to walk in the ways of our Father, of how to walk in the footsteps of our Messiah. They summarize all of the Father's commandments. They summarize his directives for us. They summarize the teachings of our Messiah. It's the 10 Commandments. And it's really a very, very simple thing. Now, most of us, when we think of the 10 Commandments, we think of the quick version, the little bullet point version. I am God. No other gods before me. Don't take my name in vain. Keep the Sabbath holy. That is a diluted version of the 10 Commandments, which is okay for memory, to memorize them, to kind of help keep your bullet points in there. It's okay to have that bullet point list. But when it comes to application, for memorization, the bullet point list is fine. When it comes to application, we want full strength. We can dilute for memorization, but we want full strength for application in our lives. And so I want to go over all the 10 Commandments with you today. We're going to go over them one by one, and we're going to talk about them. Because one of the biggest, if we just set our hearts to follow the 10 Commandments, if we set our hearts wholeheartedly to follow the 10 Commandments, everything else would fall into place. And you would be amazed at the difference it would make. You'd be amazed at the difference it makes in your life. But as believers, we tend to want to treat them as multiple choice. We tend to want to pick and choose. And we're shortchanging ourselves when we do that. We're missing out on a lot. The United States has so many laws that we don't know a number. We do not have a number. They cannot count how many laws we have. We know it's well over 50,000. But yet I consider myself a law-abiding citizen of the United States. And I take great comfort in being a law-abiding citizen because I don't have to worry about someone coming to my door. I don't have to worry about having to go to prison. I don't have to worry about, there's a lot of comfort I get from knowing that I'm obeying the law. And how much more so comfort and joy, eternally so, do we get from being a law-abiding citizen of the kingdom? And the 10 Commandments are our gateway to that. They're also our doorway to understanding, like I said, all the teachings of our Messiah, of the Father, and of walking in his way. As we continue to read, you're going to learn so much more about our Messiah. We've also been studying him since Genesis 1 as well. You may not realize it yet. You will. You're just getting puzzle pieces as you go. It's fine. You're learning on his timeline now. So don't stress over that. Don't stress if you haven't read the whole Bible before. You're here now. That's what matters. You're showing up now, okay? Messiah walked this out. He taught us by example how to walk this out, and he walked it out perfectly. At the time, so many people were using the 10 Commandments as a checklist. They weren't doing it out of love. They were doing it out of, well, I'll check this off, okay, now I'm fine. Messiah came and taught us how to walk it out with love. So that's very important too. I've got my notes here, and I want to okay. Just a second, let me make sure I haven't missed anything I want to talk about in the intro. Okay. Now, I'm going to start with the 10 Commandments, and we're going to go through each of these, and then have a few other things I'm going to talk about too in relation to this. Don't think you don't need to read along with this. Don't think that there's nothing that I have to offer you in this video, because I really think there is. If only encouragement. Or maybe how to encourage others. So we're going to go to Exodus chapter 20. That's where we study the 10 Commandments. And we're going to read the whole commandment, not just the little quickie version. Remember, for self-application, we want full strength, okay? The first one. In my Bible here, it's in all caps Lord, which we know is where his name was removed. So I like to put his name back in. Now, I pronounce his name Yahweh. We don't know exactly how to pronounce his name. Some people will just beat you over the head and argue with you until they and you are blue in the face, because they are just determined that they know exactly how to pronounce his name. Usually they're also determined that you're wrong. I want to assure you, we don't know definitively how to pronounce his name. But you know, when you were, if any of you are parents, the first time your child tried to say your name or your title, how precious that was. Even if they got it wrong, it was so precious. And I believe the Father values that. He gave us his name because he wants us to know it, you know. He tells us to call upon it. He wants us to have that level of intimacy with him. You can call me Mrs. Jordan. You can call me by many titles. But it is special to me when someone knows my name and calls me Christy. That's a special level of relationship. I want to clarify, though, that I don't think it's wrong for you to call him God. I don't think it's wrong for you to call him Lord. He is. All those titles apply to him. I just want to let you know that my personal preference, whenever possible, is I like to call upon his name, because he has given us that gift of being able to do so to the best of our ability. Even though we don't know exactly how to pronounce it. That's not on him. That was a whole other issue. So I like to put his name in. I want to also talk about this. Sorry, one more thing. It is also important to know his personal name, especially in these times, because we have a lot of religious leaders who are trying to say that different faiths are all worshiping the same God. Most of their gods have names, and it's not the name of our God. And it's just, I just feel like that may be more important as we come closer to the end times. I'm not saying we're in the end times. Well, you know, we've been in the end times since Messiah ascended, so we're coming closer. I, Yahweh, am your God, who brought you from the land of Egypt, from the house of slavery. Now notice how he reminds you who he is. Right there, he's like, I'm the one who brought you out of the land of Egypt. I'm the one who freed you from the house of slavery. Now, I wasn't among those Israelites who came out of the house of Egypt. But he is just the same, nonetheless, freed me from slavery. Through the precious gift of his Son, our Messiah, I have been freed from the bondage of my sin, from that yoke of slavery to my sin. And these commandments help ensure that I retain that freedom. This teaches me how to live that life. You know, a lot of people think accepting Jesus, Yeshua, as our Messiah, people kind of treat it like it's the end. Like, oh, I got saved. And then they just go about their day. It's the beginning. Now you have access to the Holy Spirit. You have direct access to the Father, and he's going to teach you. He's going to help you. We have that helper to walk all of this out. So You shall have no other gods before me. That's the first commandment. What does it mean to have other gods before him? Honestly, in our time, I think the God that is put before him the most often is ourselves. Think about that. It's ourselves. So often we are sitting on that throne in our lives that belongs only to him. And you're warned about this time and again in the Bible. We're warned about this over and over and over. So, something to take to heart. But a God is anything that we put before him. Okay, let's move on to number 2. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is on the earth beneath, or that is in the water below. You shall not bow down to them or serve them. For I, Yahweh your God, am a jealous God, responding to the transgression of fathers by dealing with the children to the 3rd and 4th generations of those who reject me, and showing covenant faithfulness to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. How do we show that we love him? Keep his commandments. So he's talking about idols here. Now, idols, when we do worship idols, and we're going to read this time and again in the Bible, worshiping idols in the Father's eyes, he tells us that he considers that adultery against him. That's very important to take to heart. It hurts him on that level when we worship idols. And people say, well, I don't worship idols, because you may not have a statue in your house or something. But anything that you hold above him, anything that you put before him, that's your idol. I've seen a lot of people in the name of Christianity worshiping other things, which is going to lead into another commandment. So let's go on to that. That's something to think about too. You shall not take the name of Yahweh your God in vain, for Yahweh will not hold guiltless anyone who takes his name in vain. Let's talk about that. A lot of people think, and I can see this application. A lot of people think that saying God.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Sorry, this is all on my iPad. A lot of people think that saying one of his titles haphazardly is taking his name in vain. And I really respect their efforts to avoid doing that, and I try to avoid doing that myself. That's not, it's not his name, but when you're using it as his name, I totally see that. I have no issue with that whatsoever. But I want to expand your thinking on this a little bit. There is a great book I read years ago by a rabbi, Jonathan Sacks. Now, he passed away recently. He was a man that loved our Father. He's one of our Jewish brethren. So to my knowledge, I don't know that he considered Jesus, Yeshua, to be the Messiah. I don't know that he knew that. But he was a man who was after the Father's heart. And we don't know. Let's not go about saying that we know whether or not someone believes in Messiah, because we don't know, okay? I know that there are people who are among our Jewish brethren. There are a lot of them who do believe. In some communities, they may be remaining silent in order to help lead other people. I get that. Either way, this should not be a point of contention, because the Bible tells us that we're working our way through that. And rather than focus on their belief or lack of belief, we need to focus on our assignment, which is to be a light and walk in following him, so that it provokes them to jealousy of what we have and causes them to look at the Messiah with maybe the veil lifted so that they can see. And in order to do that, we do have to be so careful that we're actually representing Messiah accurately. The way that they view Messiah now is through the lens of how Christianity has represented Messiah. And for the past several hundred years, more than that, far more than that, this has not been an accurate representation. I mean, you think of the things, the horrors that were committed in the name of Christianity. Now, did God sanction those things? Absolutely not. But they were done in His name, which brings me to my point. Taking the Father's name in vain also applies to doing something, professing it to be in His name, that He does not sanction. Which, that book that I was talking about when I started all this, it was called Not in My Name, or Not in God's Name, something like that. And it was talking about the atrocities that had been committed by the three Abrahamic faiths in the name of the Father that He did not sanction and that He actually speaks against. So that's important. I think taking the Father's name in vain is also misusing His name. Doing something in His name that goes against His word, or that goes against His instruction. Going against His instruction, teaching others to go against His instruction, and doing it in His name, professing that He's okay with it. That's taking His name in vain as well. So you see how these are actually, if you go by these 10 things, it's going to really change your thinking. It's going to draw you closer to the Father. It's going to have your steps walking in the footsteps of our Messiah. That's number 3. Number 4. This is a tough one because we really like the multiple choice option on this. To be clear, there's no multiple choice option, but we've created one. And so number 4 is remember the Sabbath day to set it apart as holy. Now, most of the Cliff Notes versions say remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. I used to have a plaque on my wall that said, they actually have like a little quick version of 10 Commandments when the kids were younger. And on the 4th commandment, it said, sorry, I'm not speaking. On the 4th commandment, it said, go to church on Sunday. And that's not what the 4th commandment says at all. So let's read what it says. Remember the Sabbath day to set it apart as holy. For 6 days you may labor and do all your work. But the 7th day is a Sabbath to Yahweh your God. On it you shall not do any work, you, or your son, or your daughter, or your male servant, or your female servant, or the cattle, or the resident foreigner who is in your gates. For in 6 days Yahweh made the heavens and the earth and the sea and all that is in them, and He rested on the 7th day. Therefore Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart as holy. So this is a day that is holy to Him. Now, we have days that are sacred to us. I'm not going to say holy because only God can make something holy. Okay? We have days that are sacred to us. My wedding day, August 8th. That's a sacred day to me. That's a very special day. December 21st is a very special day. My daughter was born, and that day is sacred to me. And when that day rolls around, I remember it in my heart, and I give thanks to the Father. July 6th, that's when my son was born. That day's sacred to me. We have other very special days. Days that we join together with our family and friends to worship Him. For most of us, that day is Sunday. I say that was the day I did it for a long time. Nothing wrong with worshiping on Sunday. That can be a very sacred day to you. It can be a special day to you. However, the Father made the Sabbath holy. It says what it says. That's what my friend Margie says. The Bible says what it says. We can argue with it. We're not going to argue with it in the group, and I'm not going to argue with it with you. I have no desire to argue it with you. I want to talk about these commandments. It says what it says. So the Father made the Sabbath holy, and you can keep the Sabbath holy and still go to church on Sunday. You can go to church Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It don't matter, okay? You can still go to church any day you want and keep the set-apart day holy and set apart. In doing this, you are going to learn so much. This is going to sound crazy, but one of the hardest parts about keeping Sabbath for us. We've been keeping Sabbath, I think, maybe 4 years now. One of the hardest parts about keeping Sabbath for us was learning how to rest. It is very difficult in our time to rest because we have been conditioned and trained time and again not to rest. And so that was really difficult for us. But the Father taught us so many lessons in learning how to do that. So take that to soul. Think about it, mull it around a bit. And I do want to encourage you to keep the Sabbath. You know, my friend, I was talking to a friend of mine this morning, and she made this really great point. A lot of times the Father would tell us to do something, and we may not understand it. Obedience comes before understanding. Think about it. Once we agree that He is right, and we set our minds and our hearts to obey Him, then He will give us understanding. Until we agree with Him, we have not made Him God in our lives. And we have to get off the throne and let Him take the throne before He gifts us with the gift of understanding. So often, I'm not saying we're going to understand everything. Our minds are not that big, okay? But it's about having faith and trust. And another thing is, people say you have to go on faith. You have to go on faith. Well, what I've learned also is you only have to go on faith for a little while. Because, you may follow the Father on faith, and then you're going to see Him part the waters. And then you're like, whoa, I've seen His hand. I've seen Him do this. It's not about blind faith. It's about full knowing. And so I do want to encourage you to open the gift of the Sabbath that He wants to give you. You may not understand, you may disagree, all that stuff. Okay, let Him be God and do what He says. Give it a shot. Give it a shot. Try it out. That's important. But if you don't want to, if commandment number 4 is just too hard for you, you just cannot make yourself rest one day, please keep it in the back of your mind. And is my fervent prayer that you will work your way there. Now, we do have people say, but I have to work on that day after this. Okay, I get it. We are in Egypt right now. We're in bondage in this world to an extent. So when you set your heart to follow the Father, He's going to start breaking those chains that the world has on you. Okay? So let's say you have a job and you have to work on Sabbath. Pray and ask the Father to help you find a way where eventually you won't have to. It may be a couple of years. It doesn't matter. Also, when you go to work on Sabbath, you need to know, because we're called to keep that day set apart and treat it as holy. It's not like a regular day for us. So when you go to work on Sabbath, get up a little earlier in the morning. If you have to go to work on Sabbath, get up early in the morning. Spend more time in the Word. And set that day apart as holy all day long in your heart and in your soul, and treat it as such. Be the brightest light you can possibly be to everyone you encounter. Show them the most grace you could ever possibly show to everyone you encounter. There are ways to treat this day as holy, regardless of circumstance. Don't ever let what you can't do serve as an excuse to not do what you can. He shows up for us. Let's show up for Him. That's how I feel about that. No excuses. All in. Don't ever let what you can't do keep you from doing what you can. Okay? And then He'll make a way. This is the Creator of the universe. He will make a way. And if He doesn't make a way for years, remain faithful. Remain steadfast. Keep praying. And keep that day holy in your heart to every possible extent that you can. All right, here's another one. Wait, I just got out of my Bible app. That was number 4. Number 5. Honor your father and mother, that you may live a long time in the land the Lord Yahweh your God has given you. Honor your father and mother. Now, I know there's always exceptions whenever we talk about this. People will tell me horror stories about their parents. I get it. But still, do the best you can. Show them honor. Love them, even if they haven't been able to love you in the ways that you would have liked. If your parents aren't, serve them. Have a servant's heart. Humble yourself. It's hard. The truest test of whether or not you have a servant's heart is how you respond when somebody treats you like one. And how I learned this. I had an interaction. I don't want to go into but I had an interaction years ago that really just woke me up. I had guests in my home, and it was a prominent person in the community. And I cooked this big dinner and stuff, and I was very much treated like I was just some nameless waiter who was there to serve, and it was just like, wow, and it bothered me, it rattled me, and then I realized, I gotta get off my pride here. We should be happy to serve people, and especially your parents. We need to serve them. If they're abusive, do the best you can. We can honor people from a distance, but however you can, honor your father and mother. Now, personally, I see further application for this. The Bible also tells us to stand in the presence of a gray-haired person, and we're supposed to honor the elderly. We're supposed to honor our senior citizens. Now, there's a lot of blessings in this too, because when we honor our senior citizens, we are then able to form those precious relationships that allows us to partake of their wisdom and of their life experience. There's how many of y'all have done stupid things in your childhood, and you try to teach your children not to do them so that they can benefit from your experience? So I think this also, honor your father and mother. Now, you will also notice in your life at different times that the father puts mother and father figures in your life, and show honor to them as well. You will be blessed greatly for it. That is number 6. Number 5, I'm sorry. Number 6 is you shall not murder. Now, when we get into the Gospels, you're going to see that Messiah expanded on these. Expounded. That's a better word. People were thinking, don't murder. Okay, I'm fine. But Messiah's like, if you hate people in your heart, you're murdering them. Messiah taught us how to live these out. He fulfilled the commandments, which means he filled up the commandments. He helped us understand them all. So he says, I'm going to get to this in a second, but you're not supposed to commit adultery. But if you're thinking about another woman in an intimate way, if you're thinking about, I'm thinking from the man's perspective, if you're thinking about another man in an intimate way, Messiah taught us that, hey, that's adultery in your heart. It's not just about a little checklist. It's about a heart issue, okay? So if we hate people, if we wish they weren't here, if we wish someone was deceased, there are ways that we can murder people in our heart. That's something to think about. Number 7, you shall not commit adultery. This goes in with number 2. Because when we put other gods before the Father, when we set other idols up in our heart, when we go after other gods, when we worship other things, we're committing adultery against Him. Also, how much better is your relationship if you have a covenant with one another and with the Father, and you know that you can trust that person? How much better is that? Number 8, you shall not steal. It seems easy, but we can blur the lines of anything. Our heart is so deceitful. But if you hold these things up, as these commandments are lines that I will not cross. The difference it will make. Thou shalt not steal. It seems simple, but I want you to think about it. Has there been a time in your life where even if something tiny, I remember I had this horrible guilty, well, not horrible, but I had a terribly guilty conscience growing up. And I remember one day I was working at Sears when I was a teenager. I worked in the hardware department, and so we wore these vests, and we had little pins and things we would keep in our pocket. And I had put a pin in my pants pocket, and I went home and saw that I had that pin. And I was so worried because our department was right by the security office. And I thought, I know they saw me put that pin in my pocket. I know. And I went the next day and I sung like a bird, confessing to security that I had taken a pin home the night before, but I had brought it right back. And I was so sorry. And they laughed at me. But still in my heart, I was like, I knew that I had taken that. It wasn't mine. Now, I know that's still a somewhat benign example, but my heart was set to not doing that. And if we set our heart to not doing it in the small things, if we don't ever blur those lines, then it's going to prevent us from letting the lines blur bigger and bigger. That allows us to do it from the greater things. I'm thinking of way more implications of this one, so y'all just gonna have to take this in on your own. Let's see. Number 9 is, you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. This one is huge. If believers obeyed this today, Facebook would have probably 75% fewer posts. Let me explain that. Your neighbor is not who you don't get to define who your neighbor is. Messiah taught that when he told the story of the Good Samaritan. And I have a video that explains what that story was really about. And I will link to it somewhere in this. So look around the description. You'll see the true story of the Good Samaritan. We don't get to define who our neighbor is. So think of your neighbor kind of as your fellow human being. We'll do that. That'll be the simple one. False testimony against your neighbor. When you lie about someone, you're bearing false testimony. Sorry, give me just a second. If somebody else initiates the lie and you just spread it, you're bearing false testimony. If someone posts something derogatory about a politician that you don't like, but you love that post because it makes you feel good because you don't like that person and this is negative about them, and you share it, sharing is sinning. Plain and simple. If you are bearing false witness about people. If you think it's true and you don't know any better and you share it anyway, it doesn't matter. It's still on you. We are responsible for the decisions that we make. And I see so many things. People will share. I mean, there was this whole thing about it was a couple months ago, saying that they wouldn't allow, that Mark Zuckerberg had stated, and they had actually heard, that he was not going to allow the Lord's Prayer to be shared on Facebook. And I'm sharing this right now just so that I can. Well, they missed the irony of the fact that you're saying you can't share the Lord's Prayer on Facebook while sharing the Lord's Prayer. But also, I thought, this doesn't seem right. And I looked, it took me 2 minutes of a Google search to find that this is absolutely false. So they're all bearing false witness. They're sharing the Father's word and bearing false witness at the same time, which also brings us back to using his name in vain. And they were lying. And I'm just like, how many sins were just committed in this post? And some people may not have known better, but you know what? That doesn't mean they didn't still do it, and there's still the consequences of doing it. Don't bear false witness against your neighbor. Don't lie about people. Don't gossip about people. The best thing to do is to just don't. In this day and age, it's so easy to share things on Facebook. Sit on your hands if you have to. And let me tell you something. Your life is going to be so much easier without it. Your life is going to be so much easier. You know, each of these commandments, when we start living them out and walking them out, it's just like unlocking the blessings of the Father. it's going to make your life so much easier. You know that peace I have from being a law-abiding citizen of the United States? Oh my goodness, I can't even tell you how much more peace I have. And I will proudly, will you say, oh yeah, I'm a law-abiding citizen? Well, then why don't we say, oh yeah, I'm a commandment keeper? You know? Yeah, you said, well, I can't possibly be. But we've been programmed that it's not good to even say that you keep the commandments because that's too hard. We've been shamed into that. But the Father says we should boldly declare that. We should be proud of that. His word teaches us to do that. Sometimes if I'm in a 55 mile per hour zone, I can look down and see that I'm going 57. What do? I slow down. Does that mean I'm a criminal? No, it means I had an accident, went a little over, I slow down. It's the same way with the Father's commandments. I set my heart to follow the speed limits. I set my heart to follow His commandments. Okay? If we make a mistake, if we stumble, if our heart was set to follow Him, that makes a difference. That's where grace comes in, y'all. Okay? So don't let the world convince you that it's bad to say you're a commandment keeper. That it's bad to set your heart to do this. It's such a backwards world we live in. Remember, y'all, we're in Egypt. Okay? We're in Egypt. You cannot look to the culture around you for instructions and guidance on how to live. Book open, eyes on Him. Let's see. Number 10. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that belongs to your neighbor. That one's pretty straightforward, but it can also have other implications as well. Are you jealous of other people's lives? Do you think they have a better job? Do you wish you had their education? Do you wish you had their position? Do you wish you had their eloquence? Do you wish you had... there's so many things. And what are these things doing? When we covet these things, we're taking our eyes off the blessings the Father has placed before us and the mission field that He has put us in and the purpose that He has given us specifically for our life. It keeps our focus off the Father, and it keeps us from fully living in the place that He wants us to live. It keeps us from blooming in the soil that He has planted us in. So we have to keep our eyes on Him. Now, here's the other thing. A lot of people, y'all, this is going to sound crazy to you. Some of you are going to think this is so off the wall. Some of you have heard this and you're going to be nodding your head, and you will probably be in the minority, okay? But there are actually people today. There are actually pastors today. One prominent one who teaches that the 10 Commandments don't apply to us. Whew, that's crazy. It's so important to go by what the Father says. I will take the Father's word over the man's word any day, over any man's word, and by man, woman, whatever. His word is truth, okay? Now, if someone leads you astray, if we follow someone who leads us astray is going to bear a very heavy and weighted responsibility. They will answer for that. But we will still answer for following them when we should have been following Him. There's no such thing as a secondhand relationship with the Father. There's no such thing as a secondhand relationship with His Word. We're responsible for knowing it and doing it, and we're responsible for our actions. You can't just hitch your wagon to a pastor or a teacher and then put it on cruise control and expect to be fine. It don't work that way. That's why we're reading the Word firsthand here. It's so important. Remember, obedience before understanding, okay? So if you would just set your heart to follow these commandments. Now let me show you something else. If you do set your heart to follow the commandments, the 10 commandments, everything else is going to fall into place. Everything else is going to fall into place. You're going to find yourself desiring the things that the Father wants to give you. You're going to find yourself studying His Word. You're going to find yourself wholeheartedly chasing after Him. You're going to find yourself so in love with Him that you're searching His Word for more ways to know Him and more ways to follow Him. So everything else is going to be added to this, okay? If you just set your heart on those 10 commandments. you're going to find yourself, eventually, you will find yourself keeping Passover. You'll probably find yourself keeping Sukkot. Don't let that be a heavy weight on you right now. Don't panic over that right now. Set your heart to follow the commandments. Set your heart to open the gifts he has before you. One by one, as you're ready, when he sees that you're actually opening the gifts he puts before you, you're going to open it. You're going to open maybe the gift of Sabbath, and you're going to start experiencing that. You're going to say obedience, and then you're going to start understanding through living it. And he's going to say, okay, here's another gift. And it is a gift. Don't get me wrong. Absolutely a gift. In every possible way. He's going to give you another gift. He's going to give you different levels of understanding. He's going to pull you closer and closer to him. When he finds out when he sees you're actually listening for his voice, he's going to speak more. I don't waste my time talking when nobody's listening to me. When people start listening, I'm going to start talking. I'm going to open up. I'm going to share a lot more of myself. Okay? So just don't worry about all the other stuff right now. Start with the 10 Commandments. Start with the 10 Commandments. Now let me show you something else. So the 10 Commandments are a summary of all the teachings of the Father. Okay? So all those 613, they fall under the 10. They fall under one of the 10 Commandments. Some are only, but again, don't just worry about the 10, okay? Here's the cool thing. The first 4 commandments, they teach us how to love the Father. They're all about how to love him, how to show our love to him. The remaining 6 are how to love our neighbor. They teach us how to love those around us. Now, Messiah, in Matthew 22, I'm going to read this. So the Pharisees were trying to trap him. We're going to study this a lot more when we get there. I get so excited about walking you through the Gospels because I am just, it's so exciting. But you have to read through this first. Also, I want to add a little point. A lot of people at this point in the study, usually, not a lot, but there's usually people saying, how come we're focusing so much on the Old Testament? Why are we studying all this stuff? We should be focusing on the New Testament. We're not doing... Okay, we're focusing on the Old Testament because we're reading through the whole Bible, and the Old Testament is like over 75% of the Bible. So these are the foundational scriptures that Messiah and the apostles studied, taught from, and lived by. You cannot understand the book if you don't know the movie if you walk in on the last 5 minutes. It's the same with the Bible. You think you know it, but until you know all this and then read your way through it, you need to read your way to it to understand. So we're reading our way to understanding. So it always kills me when I have people offended that we're spending so much time on Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy when it's a read through the whole Bible reading, So I know that's kind of foreign to us. Before I had read through the whole Bible, I had never studied it. I had never studied the foundational scriptures too. I know it's foreign to you. I know it may seem weird to some of you. It's okay. We're supposed to be a peculiar people. So let's just put our little peculiar hat on and wear it with pride. Okay? Now, in Matthew 22, the Pharisees were trying to trip him up, and we're going to study a lot more about this. So they were trying to entrap him, and they were trying to get him to say that some commandments were more important than others so that they could then say that he was diminishing other commandments, because that's something that we're not to do either. Saying, well, this is, picking and choosing. They were trying to get him to treat him as multiple choice, which is something that we should never do, but we freely do it in our culture today. So 34, Matthew 22:34. But when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together. Every challenge they present to Messiah, he outsmarts them. And one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. Now see, notice they say they're asking him this to test him. They're trying to trap him. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment of the law? Now, if he says that one is greater, then they can say that, oh, well, he said these weren't important. He is diminishing the law, okay? And he said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Now, you see what just happened here. The first 4 commandments tell us how to love the Father. The remaining 6 tell us how to love our neighbor. Messiah just summarized the 10 commandments with 2. And then he even says, on these 2 commandments depend all the law and the prophets. All the teachings of the Father's law and all the teachings of the prophets are summarized in those 2 commandments. You see? Focus on the 10. It starts with the 10. Those are going to be, that's your entrance right there. That is your key to understanding and knowing Messiah and the Father and to walking in our Messiah's footsteps. Can we all agree? Well, I know some of us may not, and that's okay, because some people, we're at different points in our faith. We have some people in the group who are exploring, trying to decide if they can trust in the Father. We have some people who've been hurt. But most of us will agree that Jesus, Yeshua, our Messiah, taught us how to live and is the perfect example. Walking in his footsteps, following the 10 commandments. It'll put you right there in line with him. I also want to point out that when Messiah said that in Matthew 22:37, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. Does that sound familiar to y'all? If you've been reading along with us, you know. That's from Deuteronomy 6:5. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your might. That's the Shema. It starts with, Hear, O Israel. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your might. Shema. And Shema in Hebrew, it means more than just to hear. It means to hear and do. It's an action word. So when you hear Shema, sit up straight, because you're fixing to get some marching orders from the Father. It's very important to do that. So I hope that helps you. I hope this helps with some of that anxiety some people are having right now. And I understand that, because when you desire to live according to the Father's word, you're thinking, where do I even start? You know, when you start reading it, it can be overwhelming. But just keep in mind that right now, you're still picking up puzzle pieces. The Father's teaching you. He's revealing himself to you. So don't feel like you're behind. You've got to catch up. You've got to try to learn everything as quickly as possible. We're working on his timeline now. And I have been a diligent, wholehearted, whole Bible believer for several years now. And what's the main structure of how I live my life? 10 commandments. It's pretty easy. 10 commandments. And I will tell you, it's the easiest thing I've ever done. Easiest thing I've ever done. It has made our lives so much easier, so much more peaceful, so much more joyful. It's just been a great blessing to us. So blessings abound, but you do have to step on faith, and you may not understand them all right now, and you may think that you can do it your own way. There's a warning in Deuteronomy. Just let me get there. Sorry. Just a second. There is a warning in Deuteronomy 29. It's talking about beware that the heart of no man, woman, clan, or tribe among you turns away from Yahweh your God today to pursue and serve the gods of those nations. If we turn away from him, we are very much pursuing and serving the gods of our nation. And don't think we don't have gods in our nation. Beware that there is among you no root producing poisonous and bitter fruit. Have you ever tasted the poisonous and bitter fruit of someone? There are people who bear poisonous and bitter fruit. When such a person hears the words of this oath, he secretly blesses himself and says, I will be okay, though I continue to walk in the stubbornness of my own heart. I spent most of my life walking in the stubbornness of my own heart. And when I decided to yield my heart to Him, when I decided to trust His heart over my own, when I realized how much He loves me and that He only gives good and wise counsel, and that His counsel is a gift that He gives me out of His infinite love and tender care and loving kindness for me, then I realized what I was leaving on the table. And it's exactly what I had been missing in my life. So I want to encourage you. Start with a 10. Start with a 10. I love y'all, and I'm so honored to be here, being able to study. Oh, that was beautiful. Being able to study His Word alongside you. And I will see you on the porch. Bye.